Hello and welcome to the Lodgers, Sordid Cinema's Twin Peaks podcast. My name is Simon Howell. I am joined, as always, by Kate Rennebaum.
Hello, everybody.
We are flying solo this week. I'm going to be real with you. Last week's episode got a little bit unwieldy on the behind-the-scenes side, so we were just like, dear God, let's keep this one simple. So hopefully we can keep y'all entertained with just our small selves.
I hope all of you audience members out there listening just take a moment to clap into your space in front of you in thanks and to Simon Howell for spending way too much time last week piecing together our podcast from various disparate and unsynced and kind of broken down recordings because we had kind of like a Skype disaster. So just thanks again to Simon for doing that.
Well, I appreciate the thanks. I'm trying to put it behind me. Yeah. So part 10 of The Return. Let's do this. Let's get right into it. A little bit of a svelte episode at a tidy 53 minutes with, I believe, an at least 5-minute musical section at the end, courtesy of Rebecca Del Rio. I don't know about you, but the first time, as I've mentioned before, I watch my episodes through Crave TV in Canada, and the first thing I do when the episode loads is I hover my mouse over to the end of the progress bar to see how long the episode is. And I was like, 53:34 or whatever it was. Lynch and Frost, you so-and-sos. You're depriving me of that extra 5 minutes. Oh well. So we had a little bit less content this week. My gut feeling about this episode is that it might be the most extreme episode so far in terms of showcasing sort of the goofiest and the goriest. Maybe not goriest, but the most unpleasant, the blackest parts of The Return. Often with the sort of rapid tonal whiplash we really associate with Lynch and Peaks in specifically. In greater portions and with greater disparity than I think is showcased in any of the other episodes. Is that your feeling as well?
Yeah. Yes. This episode was like a bumpy ride for me. I mean, I think Olivia and I watched it on the Sunday night, obviously, when it first came out, before we watched Game of Thrones. Thank you very much. Which will continue to be the order, people. But anyway, so we watched it on Sunday night, and I wasn't really prepared for how upsetting it was going to be. I mean, this is, I think a common theme with Lynch is that it goes to dark places, and I always feel like I'm kind of more or less prepared, and then Lynch, still manages to shock me, really. At first, that shock for me kind of translated into me not liking the episode. I found it quite disjointed. Olivier was really bothered by how much of the episode was focused on the Mitchum brothers and how much it sort of seemed to break down any of the other momentum in terms of plot that had been building up. And these kinds of things. I just found it so difficult to watch, and that I was like, this isn't fun, why am I doing this? This is just really torturous. Why am I going through this? But then I sort of gave it a couple of days and rewatched it again this morning, and as much as you can say that I love an episode like this, because it's hard to say that you love something that is so difficult to watch, I think this was a really strong episode in a lot of ways. I actually think it's maybe one of it's hard to say. I don't know if I want to rank things, but I would say it's very much at the upper end of, I think, what Lynch has been doing here. But it's much more kind of a kindred spirit with something like Fire Walk with Me than it is with the original show, for sure.
Yeah. My feeling is that it's a stronger episode than last week's, but I do have some misgivings that maybe we should start with stuff we're not sure about, or that we've maybe. I think there are certain aspects that 10 episodes in, I think we can say maybe okay, I'm good on that, And for me, one of them is I have to say, having gotten another scene of Jacoby's podcast. It's a good sequence, and it's nice to see Nadine reacting and all that, and to see obviously the silent drape runners and the bizarre store name, whatever it was. Run
Silent, Run Drapes, which is a reference to a film from 19 I have it here in 1956 called Run Silent, Run Deep, which is like a Japanese submarine World War II like Hollywood film with Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable in it.
Okay.
Anyway.
How did I know you'd have a note about that? Yeah, so I mean, it's a fine sequence. It's very funny. It, much like the initial sequence was, doesn't really add anything new to the plot, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think there are maybe a few things there like that. Hearing you talk about Jacoby, Simon, you actually just reminded me of a point that I had thought when I first watched the episode, and then had kind of forgotten. So I'm glad you reminded me of it. But which is basically this idea that I feel like this episode, particularly the first time you watch it, it's kind of brazen, like how much it's putting in the spectator's face just how little we've moved forward from like the first sort of 4 episodes, basically. Like, to me, it felt very much like Lynch and Frost basically pointing out we're exactly where we started. Like, nothing has really changed. We are not very far into this. And more than that, it's just sort of like, again, the return. Like, this is maybe the 16th different way in which you could talk about like the notion of a return. And I have a couple more even for this episode later. But like this idea that we seem to be very much back at the beginning. And I feel like the Jacoby stuff is sort of part of that. Like, we're sort of back in the space where like violence against women is the predominant theme, which was it felt so present in those first bunch of episodes. Again with Jacoby, again with these sorts of repetitions. I don't know, like, how does that strike you? I'm not saying that justifies like the Jacoby sequence, because I kind of agree with you that like at this point it's becoming a bit agitating, like how much we want things to happen. This for me was the first episode where I will admit that I had a couple of moments where I was like, I just want to see characters that I am familiar with. I just want to see those people. I want to see Audrey. I want to see, like Ed. I was really hoping that Ed Hurley would turn up in this episode, like that kind of stuff. And I get it that this is just sort of part of going through it. And I'm sure I will feel differently about these episodes when we like look back at them after having seen the whole thing. But for now, I think it really matters that like, it's grating even on me, and I feel like I'm very open-minded about waiting for this stuff, but
yeah, then you think about like how like the normie fans must be feeling.
Indeed.
If there is such a thing as a normie Twin Peaks fan, and I think there is. Yeah, I mean that crossed my mind as this episode was ending, especially since, as I noted, like the Rebecca Del Rio song starts like around the 47-minute mark. And I saw how much was left in the episode, and I'm like, okay, there's going to be a stinger on this, right? And it was a lovely song despite the auto-tune, and despite Moby being on stage.
You thought it was auto-tuned?
Oh yeah, there was definitely a little bit auto. Like on those held notes, you can. It's like I wish that I could unhear being able to hear auto-tune, but I'm like quite certain that's what that was. It just had that.
Simon, I'm just not sure about this. I feel like you're besmirching Rebecca Del Rio's good.
Look, Rebecca Del Rio's great, but I'm telling you, those long-held notes had that digital auto-tune sheen.
Interesting. All right. You definitely can hear it better than me, so I'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one who picked up on this, and it's possible we're all wrong. But actually, this is not really relevant, but I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was funny. I read a lot from a lot of other people who watched Twin Peaks and Game of Thrones in the same night. And I'm not going to be offering any Game of Thrones spoilers, but they noted, and I also sort of noted, that it's sort of a fascinating study in contrasts, because especially now that they've sort of passed the books, Game of Thrones is really like a fan service delivery device where they're really giving people everything they want, after years and years of being like quite slow and difficult and like, giving you really horrifying stuff to watch. And Twin Peaks is sort of the opposite. And it's funny that they share a time slot.
Yeah, it's true. The sentiment in our household was that watching them back to back is not a good idea because it highlights just how aesthetically normie Game of Thrones is. And it's like, we watch that show largely just for like plot and because it's gotten it suckers into our brain and we can't not watch it because it's like, how do you talk to other humans? But I don't know, for me, it's like very clear that Twin Peaks is on a level that is not shared by something like Game of Thrones. But sorry for people who are listening who hate me for saying that, but I
don't think anyone will hate you for that. My only specific remark that I'll say, and then we can happily move on, is that I could not have rolled my eyes harder at we never did talk about Tommen. Like, okay, really? That's how you're gonna do that? Really? Anyway, moving on. And I think that this feeling of okay, I get it. I think the ultimate feeling for me on that is with respect to Richard Horne. And like individually, I think the sequences that he's in where he does these horrible things are all very powerful and very very visceral and intense. And I can't really imagine anyone other than Lynch getting away with like the sheer physicality of it. Things like when he's choking Mrs. Horne and simultaneously asking her for the combination while also like, you know, blocking her windpipe. It's just like really, and I picked up on this and many other people noticed as well. There's like a serious Clockwork Orange vibe to that sequence with the way that Johnny Horne, thankfully alive, is, you know, sort of pitched over and sort of wailing and tied up while this is happening. So again, sort of Kubrickian vibes coming in as well, but still like beyond sort of the new beat, I guess, of finding out that he has an explicit tie to the sheriff's department through another wonderful character, Chad. I'm not sure how much more Richard Horne I really need in my life, despite his fantastic nose.
I don't know. I think I'd have to disagree on that front. Not that anybody wants to see Richard Horne. I mean, I don't want to see Richard Horne, but I think that, for me, his presence is like integral to this episode and the whole show, I think, in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I mean, I think we might have to build up to some of these points because I feel like it's going to take me a while to still work out some of this stuff. But you know, this episode is very much about abuse and about violence, particularly violence against women. And the character of Richard Horne is so clearly central to all of that. And I think that there is something, I don't know, very interesting going on in terms of, again, this idea that we're expecting, with the return, we're expecting violence to come from very clear-cut places that we can predict, right? We're expecting violence to come from Evil Coop. We're maybe expecting violence to come from Bob, now that Bob has been sort of like resuscitated in some sense. You know, and in that kind of sense, and maybe violence from like the Black Lodge or the Woods or something. And then Lynch and Frost like sort of go ahead and create a character that makes Evil Coop look tame, like makes Evil Coop look not that bad, and makes Bob look kind of tame almost in comparison, which I find interesting in terms of how it works with the larger thematics of like our willingness to keep wanting to kind of like curtail, like to separate violence and make it come from like sort of like easily coded areas of like just sort of evil. And instead they're constantly saying, actually, it's sort of everywhere. It's not in these places that you want to think that it's in. There's that part of it. The Richard Horne stuff, I also thought there was some interesting stuff going on in this episode that his presence and his scenes really nailed down around, here's my other way of using the word, the return. In the sense here of, I think this episode is very much about cycles of violence as a form of return, like the idea of the kind of eternal return, the sense of here you have generational violence, between Evil Coop and Richard. You have the, again, sort of generational repetition between Shelley, and I always forget the husband's name. What's Shelley's, as Shelley's daughter, Becky. What's Becky's guy's name supposed to be again? Do you remember?
He's just Caleb Landry Jones to me.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember his name either. But like this kind of stuff. I mean, this idea of like violence keeps coming back. And I do think it's interesting overall, the sense in which this episode again kind of doubles down on what was being made clear in the early episodes, which is this idea that this violence here is no longer limited to something like Laura. And we'll come back to this because this idea of Laura being the one is clearly important here. But this idea that violence is no longer like focused on one person or one person's experience. It just sort of is everywhere and random, although again, primarily aimed at women. And I don't think that's a mistake. And I don't think this is Lynch and Frost just being misogynist. And I think there were some really kind of like irresponsibly written reviews, honestly, that I read that I was a little shocked about. Like how somebody could make the claim that because Richard Horne yells at Sylvia Horne, this is your fault, like you made this difficult, you know, aka that's why I abused you. like, because the show has Richard Horne yelled at, the show somehow agrees with Richard Horne. I mean, I think this episode is doing such interesting things around...
Wait, somebody actually claimed that?
Yes, somebody wrote that in a review for... and I only read it because I was purposely trying to find reviews that, like, just sort of went full tilt calling the show misogynist.
A counterpoint to what you're talking about, although also not a counterpoint, is the amazing and hilarious sequence of Candie, played by Amy Shields, who we've only seen in the background so far in her, like, essentially, like, Playboy Mansion outfit, very slowly stalking around Robert Nepper and trying to hunt for this fly. And then eventually, as we could all see coming about 90 seconds earlier, just absolutely thwacking him on the side of the face with that remote and drawing blood. And, like, from the reaction in that room, you would have thought she'd taken his eye out or something. Like, and I think it's really, first of all, just like a physically hilarious sequence, but also it says something that, like, how much offhand violence against women have we seen? And then we get, like, this one instance of a woman accidentally hitting a man, and it's just like the world is over. Like, like it can't go the other direction. That felt like sort of an interesting reaction to me.
I actually think that sequence is, like, key to what this episode is doing, and it would work very differently without it. I mean, I think having it be thematized so clearly that, like, a woman hitting a man is reacted to so differently. And, like, it calls up again this question of, like, what's going on with her as a character more generally, which is an interesting question. But I think also when you see her later, when the Mitchum brothers are sort of back in their apartment space, which, by the way, is maybe one of the more interesting kind of set design setups that we've gotten so far in terms of the kind of classic, like, Lynchian apartment house design stuff. Anyway, in that sequence, you see Candie kind of crying in the back corner the whole time, right? It's supposed to be many hours later, and she's still, like, weeping over this. And at the end, you know, she chokingly kind of says, how could you ever love me after I did this to you? And I think this was Film Crit Hulk wrote about this for whoever he or she is doing this for now. Where Film Crit Hulk pointed out, like, this. I mean, could you imagine, like, a clearer sign of somebody who grew up being abused? Like, this idea of, like, you've done something wrong, and so no one will ever love you again. And I found that heartbreaking. It's like this idea that she's sort of a victim of abuse, but then also just sort of very much highlighting, like, the like crazy difference between the like homogeny and ubiquity and rapidity of, like, women being beaten up and, like, hurt versus what happens when a man is beaten up.
I mean, she basically has a psychotic break because she hits Robert Nepper. Like, it's, and I did think it was mostly just funny, to be perfectly honest. Like, when she goes out there and gives the guy, like, the weather report when she's just supposed to bring him in. And that, how long do Nepper and Belushi just sit in that back room watching her do? It's like, what, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes?
It's something like that. And I thought that was a great joke. Like, by the way, I totally agree. All this stuff with Candie is funny. The scene where she hits Nepper and starts screaming in the beginning is quite hilarious just on its own. But, like, the scene with them waiting for her as they're watching her on the surveillance footage, I thought that was, like, a great joke about the show very knowingly winking at audience members who like feel like they're being put in that position of having to, like, sit out and wait endlessly,
and then eventually just
scenes.
Like, God damn it.
Exactly. I thought that was kind of brilliant. I was like, they know what they're doing. They know.
And I have to say, like, as someone who's, like, really enjoyed Nepper's villains, like, in many, many things over the years, like, stretching back to, I think the first time I saw him was in the original Prison Break or something. Like, I think Nepper and Belushi is a really inspired pairing.
I don't think I'm super familiar with him from before, but I do like them. But I like they're well, I don't know. I like them. I say that. I also, again, say that I kind of just want episodes where we're not spending 30 minutes with them.
That's fair. That's fair.
I do think that they're both great. And I sort of, again, I like this idea of the show kind of playing them as these, like, almost silly, like, Godfather or wannabe kind of figures. Like, they speak in sort of very silly dialogue almost.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about them being cast is that Nepper really is known for, like, nasty, violent men. and Belushi's known for, you know, goofy, you know, like sitcom dad type. So they're both kind of meeting in the middle where they're both like, they're asked to be kind of menacing, but also kind of silly. So it's, I mean, I guess it's a logical pairing in that sense. But anyway.
What I was going to ask before we forget, because I wanted to ask about Candie, because I thought it was fascinating, like how much the show puts front and center her kind of like mental space, like whatever is going on. You know what I mean? Like how in that sequence with the surveillance footage and everything, how much time and kind of like thematic energy is given to this question of like, what is the deal with Candie? Like when she is so out of it. Like and kudos to that actress who like totally nails it and gets such, like, I laughed really hard when they finally get her attention when she's leaning against the wall. Her response of like, oh, like you want me to talk? I don't know. She just kills that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I found it quite fascinating. Like this move between her weeping and then her just being so absent. And like, I don't know if that's, again, like thematizing something about the way women dressed like that certainly tend to get represented, or if there's something literal there about like they're on drugs or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because she seems to move between like being furniture and being conscious. And then like when after the hit happens, like her wires seem to be crossed. So she no longer knows when to no longer be furniture. It is a great sort of comic and physical performance. Speaking of physical performance, we have to talk about Naomi Watts again.
Yeah, we do.
Because I have to say, her scene in the kitchen, well, I should say starting with the doctor's office and then into the kitchen, has to be one of the 10 horniest performances of all time. Like man or woman, animal or vegetable. Like, I realize there's makeup and hair involved, but still, come on.
That whole sequence, Simon, I still don't really know what to make of it. Like, because as soon as it starts, like, okay, well, we'll get to the second part, but when they're in the doctor's office, Emily Stevens or somebody was writing about that scene, and I thought she had a good point, which was that it's interesting that even the doctor seems to get sucked into this idea that, like, because Dougie physically looks good, he must be healthy. I don't know. There's something interesting about that idea. Like, they're all so distracted by what Dougie looks like that everybody forgets to actually pay attention to the fact that he still can't do anything but repeat what everybody else is saying. But like these shots of McLaughlin with his shirt off, like when that sequence first started, I was like, you know, like, whew, is it hot in here? Like I don't know how to explain it. Like at first it just felt very odd. Like I was like, really? Like we're supposed to be sort of like I don't know. It draws such attention to itself that it almost reads as like just sort of strange. And then you kind of realize what's going on with Naomi Watts looking at him. I don't know. Again, it is so rare to see scenarios in which men are not clothed and women are like lusting after them in that kind of a way. It is so rare. And Lynch totally manages to like come up with this here. It completely throws you off again. You know, another in his like arsenal of being able to throw you off. And then you get to Naomi Watts at the house later, and it opens on the shot of her shoes with her feet sort of coming out of her shoes, and you know exactly where the scene is going. Like, you know what's going to happen. And my first thought was, is this like okay? Like, isn't he like a child? Like, is this some kind of weird like rape scenario? Like, and of course it seems not. Like you're sort of like, no, he's an adult, so it's okay, I guess. But it's very strange. I don't know. But she totally sells it. Like, she totally wins you over, completely sells it. I don't know. It's amazing.
My favorite part of like the doctor sequence especially is just imagining Lynch's directions for it. Just like, Kyle, you're hot stuff. Take off your shirt. I can't do it justice. Funnier in my head. I don't know. I loved everything about both scenes. You're right that like we really don't like this very female gazy sequence. Although, as you point out, it's really male and female gaze.
It's true. Doctor and female gaze.
Doctor and female gaze. It's extremely unusual. If anything, a couple things we have to talk about. First of all, I couldn't tell at first because I thought maybe where the scene was going was going to be she was going to be all hot and bothered. but then he was just going to keep eating his cake and she would get frustrated and the scene would be over.
Yeah.
Like, that's sort of what you expect. But no, like, she can see that he's just he's lusting over cake and nothing else. And then, like, I kind of, if anything, if there's anything I could have wanted out of those 5 minutes we didn't get, it would have been the seduction. Like,
I know.
I want to know how that happened. If anything, it feels like a bit of a cheat that we cut straight to, you know, the act.
It is true. I do feel like there probably could have been some good comedy. There could have been that missing 7 minutes of comedy in there somewhere.
Exactly.
But that being said, like there definitely could have been comedy in there. But I think the fact that you don't really see a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's not like the scene isn't explicit. There's obviously some explicit elements to it. And of course, like Dougie's hands bouncing up and down is going to go down in like meme history. It's amazing.
How did he steal my move
from above? Simon. Okay.
How did he know?
Okay. Becoming composed again, talking about things. What the hell was it? Oh, okay. So the like cutting over the seduction scene. There's something in there about what happens afterwards, which is that we get the scene, you know, like we get the kind of like very like I don't know how to describe it. See the scene where you sort of move over the bed sheets at the end up to like Dougie and Janey's like, you know, smiling beatific faces at the end. And then the next morning when Janey pulls him aside and says, I was just still thinking about last night. And like, it was like, love you. It was wonderful. Both of those scenes, I like the sweetness, like could just chip your teeth, you know, but not in an ironic or insincere way. Like again, these are the classic things where like, of course these are a little silly. Like of course it's pushed to 11 just a little too far. But at the same time, that scene where she like kisses him the next day and it actually seems like Dougie is sort of semi-present, like in this sort of intimate moment with her, I found them quite affecting. And like, I don't know, I think there's something pairing there about like the privacy that's given largely to this seduction that happens between them, mixed with this kind of sense in which they do actually seem to be developing this sort of very sincere kind of intimacy later. I don't know. I had lots of feelings about the scene with them.
It's really quite a thing that we now sort of root for them as a pair. Yeah. Like that's especially considering one of them is barely a person. But I mean, the other thing we haven't even mentioned is like sort of the complicating shot of that sequence, which is the cutaway to young Sonny Jim, who can clearly hear everything that's happening. It sort of sets you up to expect that he's going to waltz in. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I mean, that's no one needs to see that. And I'm not sure how, like, what was the precise intention of having him clearly hear it. If that's going to play into anything later, but I did think it was sort of an interesting wrinkle that I did not see coming. I mean, I didn't see a lot about that scene coming, to be honest. Anyway,
I feel like Twin Peaks Twitter has been talking a lot about Dougie having sex, like because this is apparently what people talk about on Twin Peaks Twitter. But I feel like I've definitely seen people making predictions about that for a while. Actually, the stuff with Sonny Jim, my guess is that that's more just part of Lynch's sort of ongoing fascination with like these moments of like childhood and like kind of the edge of loss of innocence or something, you know, like children dealing with things they don't understand. Like that would be my guess. My guess is it isn't going to go anywhere in terms of plot, but anyway.
Moving on. So over the especially last episode, we talked a lot about Diane and sort of the issue of the message. And this week we seem to get confirmation of what we sort of resisted last week, which is this direct Diane and Bad Coop cahoots, which, you know, obviously there could be some element of coercion involved. We're not sure, but I mean, it is more or less confirmed this week. So how are we feeling about that?
Yeah, the first time I watched the episode, I was not happy about it. I mean, it's almost like being kicked when you're down. This idea that we have a whole episode that seems to focus so heavily on the sort of repetition of like violence against women. Although again, we'll talk about how there's counterbalancing stuff here, but it seems to focus so heavily on that the first time you watch it. And then to boot, after we've watched Richard Horne like abuse his grandmother and his uncle, and it's such a horrible scene, Then we find out that Diane is evil or whatever, like that Diane might be evil or that Diane isn't like good or whatever. And it felt very much like this one carpet that we maybe thought we would still have under us of like having Diane be a kind of like, quote, stronger female character or whatever in the show was just sort of yanked out from under us. And for me, that felt very hard the first time around. On repeated viewings, I don't think it's that simple. And my guess, you already sort of pointed this out, Simon, but my guess is that there is possibly a chance that there will be some element of coercion, that Diane is sort of being forced to do this stuff for whatever reason. Whether or not that's true, I guess we'll find out. But the thing that I did also sort of figure out on the rewatch, which I haven't figured out how I feel about it, but having Diane, having it turn out that she is messaging Cooper about whatever, means that the show has gone the tricky direction of having a woman lie about being abused by a man, which is hard. I mean, again, Diane never actually says anything to the effect of like, I've been abused or I've been sexually abused by this guy. So it's not quite so cut and dry, but she uses the performance of having been hurt very badly by evil Cooper to manipulate the reactions of Cole and Albert and other people. And that is a very dicey area to get into. And I don't think I would never just say, oh, so the show is misogynist because it's showing women lying. I really don't think it's that simple. But what I'm sort of unclear about is like whether I kind of admire like the show's willingness to go into such touchy territory or whether I think it's just unconscious. I mean, I think that's for me the question here, but I don't know.
I'm just not convinced yet that that's the case. I mean, It's entirely possible that it completely did happen and then...
Yeah, exactly.
And like possibly in the intervening time or in the immediate aftermath, something happened that she's been like under his thumb ever since. I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things that, we always talk about like, don't expect this to get answered, but this is one of the things I really expect to get ironed out.
Yes.
It would be very strange if it didn't, even by Twin Peaks standards. But I'm not convinced that what you're saying is happening quite yet.
Well, it's interesting though, because like I think that the point you're making totally makes sense if you think about only the sequence where she's in the jail cell with evil Coop and she's going through this, and it's like this very much could be a space where she's sort of using the opportunity to like call out this guy who is possibly still coercing her into doing things, which I think and that she's still very upset. The question arises then when you have Gordon Cole in this episode saying, I could tell that something was off when she hugged me, which is this like moment where, now we're having Diane and Cole pit against each other there, right? Like one of them is wrong and one of them is right or something. And so I don't know how to feel about that. Like we'll see where that goes, but I think there's very interesting kind of oppositions being set up there or something.
Speaking of Cole, I cannot be the only one who thought he was going to buy it in this episode for a second.
Oh, I thought so, definitely. I definitely thought so too.
And when he sees the vision of Laura, and frankly, like now that we've had that scene, I'll be more surprised if he survives than if he doesn't.
Me as well.
Because holy crap, that just yells foreshadowing to me. We should note that sequence. It's a very strange sequence. To have this blown out image of Laura just appear in the hallway like that, even by the standards of the imagery we've had so far, it's a really odd sequence.
We should point out for people who are listening who maybe don't get our original reference here, the reason why we both thought that Lynch would be killed in this episode is because that whole like the setup of that scene so clearly is meant to recall Coop answering his hotel room door at the end of season 1 when it opens and he gets shot by somebody who later turns out to be Josie, which may or may not have been what the writers were thinking at the time. Anyway, but so it's set up very similarly. So it's like you're sort of expecting there to be him be shot or whatever, and instead we get this image of Laura that's blown up, like, so it's, it reads as these very large proportions visually on the screen. For people who don't recognize it, it's a shot taken from Fire Walk With Me. It's the scene in Fire Walk With Me where Laura has just seen her father coming out of the house after seeing Bob in the house. So she has just put together that her father is Bob. And she runs to the Hayward's house, and Donna opens the door, and Laura is like sobbing incoherently and asks, "Do you love me?" to Donna. And like the idea of like taking that out and inserting it here is so, I don't know, like evocative. I mean, it's like I've already seen many different people making many different things of that scene. There's a lot there.
I haven't been reading theories so much this week, so I'm curious if there were maybe some more interesting interpretations kicking around.
Oh God, the only one I can recall off the top of my head right now is I think Miriam Bale has got this thing going where on Twitter where she is positing that Cole might be evil, that like there might be something bad with Cole, that he's up to no good or something, which is kind of interesting. And there are like possibilities there that I think it sort of solves some issues that the show has had if that does turn out to be true. I don't really think it will turn out to be true, but this idea of like Laura, weeping in front of him maybe is this reference of like him being linked to Bob. I don't really buy that. That one doesn't make much sense for me. I think more, I don't know, for me it just read as like Cole being sort of somewhat in tune with this kind of other worldliness of the show, right? Like that he seems to be sort of linked into, I don't know, whatever's going on. Yeah. And Laura's return here seems to be one of these things that we're getting more and more of, right? I mean, we have both the scene with her there, and then we have Margaret, or the log lady at the end of the episode saying Laura is the one. So this seems to be something.
Which, can I just say, was not expecting another log lady appearance.
I really wasn't expecting another. That was the other thing that for me felt very much like we were back at the pilot, was log lady coming back. Yeah. The Laura scene... Yes, it is very strange. For me, it recalls the scene when is it? Maybe the pilot of... It's either the pilot or like one of the early episodes of the original run where Donna goes to see Laura's mother and Laura's mother superimposes Laura's face onto Donna. Like it felt something like that, like just this very extreme, odd effect. Like it's not supposed to read as naturalistic at all, right? No. I don't know.
At this point, like, I think it's kind of fun to make predictions because we only have 8 episodes left. We're past the halfway mark, people. So unless of course one of the I do know that the final night that the show airs, they will be airing 2 episodes like they did at the start of the season. But I'm expecting 8 regular length episodes, and I think it's kind of fun to think about what we think we can reasonably expect to see in that time span. And maybe what we reasonably can't. Like, will we see James again?
I'm putting my money down right now. No more James. I don't think it's going to happen.
Will we see Denise again? I'm also thinking no to that. I actually think it's more likely we see James again than Denise.
I'd kind of forgotten about Denise. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get more Denise.
I saw a great tweet yesterday about how someone received the insult that Twin Peaks is just the X-Files for people who like Neutral Milk Hotel. Anyway, I just really enjoyed that. The reason I'm bringing up predictions is because, like, I will be more surprised than not, again, if there isn't some kind of new physical manifestation of Laura that we get. Because it seems to be so heavily implied over and over in these episodes.
You mean like her in the world, like back in the world,
like literally resurrected somehow? That's
interesting. I don't know about that, but I mean, it would be great. Like I want Cheryl Lee around as much as possible. I don't know about that. I feel like it might be more that she ends up doing something from the other world, like that she has a role. She has a role to play in all of this from the White Lodge or wherever she is now.
See, I say this stuff now, but then next week, every single character is played by James Marshall. So, who knows? There's a couple of other sort of important things that we haven't talked about, like, for that matter, Miguel Ferrer and Jane Addams giving us a little bit of fan service.
Yeah.
That was nice. I don't have much else to say about it. It was nice. It was a rare moment of niceness.
I couldn't help but find one aspect of that scene a little weird, which is that, like, I was so happy to see Albert and Constance on a date. That was like the greatest thing ever. And then you cut back to, Gordon Cole watching this and calls over Tammy. And, at first it's like the look on their faces is like so great. And it's like they're enjoying this so much. And then it's like, Lynch has his arm around her waist. And I'm like, oh, so this is one of those workplaces where your boss, who's 40 years older than you, puts his arm around your waist.
Oh, at least 40 years older, yeah.
I just was like, I don't know what's going on here. It's like, again, like, I don't know. The show, for me, that's just one of those moments where I'm like, I really can't tell if this is part of the show thematizing something or if this is just them not understanding that it's weird to have somebody's boss put their arm around their waist.
No,
anyway.
He's a man from another era, man. What can I tell you?
That's true.
And sometimes he reminds you of that. Unless, of course, it is deliberate and Cole is evil, in which case I take it all. And actually, to be honest, Cole, I hadn't thought of the prospect of Cole being evil, and it would solve all of my grievances about the show's rosy depiction of the FBI. So that would be cool. But, again, I don't really expect it. But hey, if it's true, then hats off to Miriam Bale for figuring it out nice and early. What else can we discuss in this episode? Oh, I guess we should talk about, you already mentioned it, but I knew the line was coming because it was like the log line for the episode. But Laura is the one. The way that the show keeps recentering around Laura, even as like the show seems to be determined to spin out in every other possible direction at the same time, is very interesting to me. And again, I feel like that has to pay off in some major plot way that is like maybe not so obvious. And in fact, maybe the physical manifestation is too obvious. But I don't know. I find it really interesting the way that the show is like constant, like of all the, it constantly makes clear that it's still about her. It's still about that case. It's still about what happened to her. It's still about, her being in some way special, even as it's, introducing us to 75 new characters is very interesting, and I'm not sure what to make of it yet.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I think, like, I definitely think there will be plot ramifications for it, but I think on, like, a formal level, there's something interesting going on there with, again, this tension where you have, three women being sort of brutalized and murdered, some of them murdered in this episode. And so, again, it's this thing that I've been kind of talking about a lot in these podcast episodes lately, of Lynch playing things out across multiple people, right? Like, and here it's not this idea that these women are indistinguishable. These women here are all characters that we've been introduced to before, and we know things about them. So it's not quite that sense. But there is, again, the sense I already said at the beginning of like violence just sort of spreading out in all directions. But I think what is interesting with the show continually coming back to Laura and like keep putting Laura forward in our mind is this idea that just because the sort of violence is spreading out across women, I don't know, the show is not willing to give up this idea that doesn't mean that it matters what happens to each and every single individual, right? And like Laura is the person who stands in for that. Like Laura has always been the character that stands in for this idea that like, she's a specific person and like the tragedy of her life matters. Like it matters that she was abused and beaten and raped by her father and like destroyed. Like, it matters 30 years later. I don't know. I still think that is a really kind of amazing gesture. And I think it goes a long way towards, again, opposing any simplistic idea that the show is just misogynist.
Mm-hmm. There's actually, there's a couple things from last week we didn't get the chance to talk about because at least I was distracted in my directorial duties by what was happening. And I just wanted to bring them up to get your take on them, one of which connects to this episode, but the first of them doesn't. How are we feeling about Tim Roth and Jennifer Jason Leigh?
Yeah, Tim Roth. I forgot to bring that up too. I read somebody on Twitter saying that they had been really hoping that Tim Roth was going to play Philip Jeffries. Like Tim Roth was going to take over.
That was my guess as well.
Oh, was it? Interesting. I was completely shocked when Tim Roth showed up in that last episode. I was like, what? I'd completely forgotten he was on the cast list. But then again, like, credit to him as an actor, right? I mean, like, 3 seconds into it, you've sort of forgotten that he's this celebrity, and celebrity maybe is a bit strong, but he's this, like, big name, that you've kind of forgotten that right away. And, like, I thought his performance was really strong. I mean, I thought he really, like, was great in that scene. I don't know, this whole weird thing with, like, him presumably being married to Jennifer Jason Leigh and having Jennifer Jason Leigh, like, kiss Dougie in this sort of extravagant, excessive way. Like, I don't know, that scene was bananas.
I couldn't help but thinking that he reminded me of like a season 1 of Justified villain of the week. Like I just kept waiting for Raylan to show up and plug him full of holes. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird to see two like so high profile, like great actors in like really like determinedly minor parts. And I mean like minor in the sense that they're both like hench people who are just like, they don't seem to have a ton of defining characteristics. Like I'm not really a complaint. It's just weird. Like the hierarchy of which actors get what parts in the show is really funny to me.
That's one of the things I like about Lynch is like he's going to give like a lead to a non-actor kind of no one that no one's ever heard of, and then like the biggest people around are going to get tiny parts. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that about him. But anyway,
the other thing we didn't discuss this last week, I don't think, and it does come up again this week, is the continuing ballad of Beverly and Ben Horne. Mm-hmm. And of course, last week we had them once again hearing what we assume to be the Josie frequency, and then sort of bumping into each other, and Ben saying, "Oh, we can't. I don't know why. I just can't." Which has to be the only time in the history of Twin Peaks that anyone has like declined a boning session. It's the only time that's ever happened that I can recall. I mean, admittedly, Ben Horne is about 102 years old, but still. And then again this week we do have him just sort of calling out to Beverly after he has that rather upsetting phone call. I was just wondering how we're feeling about the state of Ben and Beverly, or maybe just Ben generally.
Yeah, Ben and Beverly. I don't know about Beverly, but sorry, hold on for 1 second. I just have to cough. Excuse me. Beverly. I don't know. It's been a while since we sort of had much with her, so she's not really on my mind. But the scene with Ben, I found interesting here because I liked it because it sort of is very much a callback to older Ben in the sense of like slight moral turpitude here. Like his still wife, I mean, they're still married. He's still wearing the wedding ring. His still wife calls him to say, "I've been brutally attacked and robbed by our grandson." And he seems
he's like,
not
sucks to be
that
you.
Concerned. Yeah, exactly. He's like, too bad for you. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, yes, of course, you're supposed to intuit that there's been this long sort of acrimonious history between them, like, sure, whatever. But his immediate response to this phone call is like, A, he's like, "I'm not sending you any more money." And then B, his response is, "Beverly, do you want to get dinner?" And it's like, there's such a clear, like, you know, it's almost laughable, like how opposite this response is from what it maybe should be.
It's kind of a great callback to how Ben has sort of always been, right? I mean, he's this guy who's like, he seems to have these periods in his life where he like wants to shun who he used to be, and then like, and maybe he does actually make inroads on that. Although it is kind of telling that when he talks to Beverly and he's like, I don't know why. It's not like, I'm married, sorry. Like it's just like, there's some amorphous reason that I can't put my ring finger on why it's happening. I just don't know.
Well, and I think Jerry says in the pilot maybe even something about how he's had like a string of women in the last while. It hasn't been that long, you know. But yeah, no, I thought that like character wise, that was a very kind of a sort of smart, evocation of the old Ben Horne. I will say I have a general question to throw out there, and it has to do with it occurred to me when we were talking about the doctor's room sequence and the way that sequence exploits in like every possible sense, like specific physical attributes of Kyle MacLachlan, and like really. Like, that's a sequence that was clearly conceived around the fact that he's quite fit, and they knew it, and they knew that they could write it and perform it, and, you know, all that good stuff. MacLachlan is the only one of the performers that we know of who was really apprised to everything the show was doing and everything the character was about, and, you know, in like in a fairly traditional way. Like, if this were any other show, like, you know, every major actor would know their arc. Everyone would know what the sort of season arc was. Everyone would know what the show was after. And Lynch, as we know generally from how he works, as we know more specifically from
stuff like the interview with Lillard, who was just totally in the dark, or very nearly totally in the dark, as to what his character about. So, my question is, do we think that maybe Lynch is using these techniques? Do we think that the way that Lynch treats his actors sometimes maybe hobbles the performance possibilities and the writing possibilities inadvertently?
Wait, sorry, I forgot. Who did we start off talking about? McLaughlin? Is there somebody you're thinking of specifically here, or just sort of everybody?
No, I'm just saying that McLaughlin is a special case because he's the one who like knew everything, and obviously he's the one that's in it the most. I'm just wondering if, do you think maybe there's anyone in the cast or any characters who would have benefited from knowing more, from being able to flesh out like a more lived-in performance, maybe?
That's interesting. I mean, I think maybe, but I also think like the opposite question totally holds true, which is how many types of like performance opportunities are lost in the other model with the over-reliance on a kind of like psychological, like the creation of a psychological interiority and like, and also the knowledge of where a character is going. I mean, how often, we don't know where we're going in life. I mean, and again, we don't all just have to be aiming for like naturalist performance styles, but, I do think that is really only sort of one way of doing it. And I think that Lynch is so good at creating performances that are so much about these sort of like affective bubbles, right? I mean, like Janey's character, it's like, I can't imagine that character from Naomi Watts would be improved by her having some sense of like Janey's backstory or Janey going forward. It's like they create that amazing character out of these moments of being like, she has this kind of attitude, or like, this is sort of how she responds. It's like, I can't think of a good example, of what Lynch would say, of course, because I'm not Lynch, but I can't, I just imagine him giving her some crazy direction that's as much about like the physicality or some remembered object or something, as much as it is about any kind of psychology. I don't know.
Imagine you're looking at the god of love.
Exactly.
I kind of feel like you're stacking the deck by using her as an example, though, because like
you're right. I am.
Naomi Watts is like clearly one of the best actors of her generation, and I'm not sure that's true. Like, not to diminish anyone in like the massive supporting cast, but lots of not the best actors of their generation in there. There can only be so many of you. All right, like geez.
No, you're totally right. It's just a funny way to put it.
I don't know. When I think about how well they use McLaughlin and like how layered that performance is, I sometimes wonder about like what might have been. But it's an idle thought that I had.
I think you're right. Like we've obviously talked about Tammy Preston as a character where we're not really sure what's going on with the performance choices there, but I mean, even a character like in this episode, like Sylvia Horne, who's played by Jan Darcy, I think is that actor's name. Sylvia Horne has been in the show since the pilot. Like, she's been around in these episodes for a long time, and we don't see her very much. And Lynch brings her back and gives her all of this stuff to do. And again, I can't imagine she was given much information beyond just this scene. And I don't know. I thought she worked really well. We haven't talked about that scene that much, and I kind of would like to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, let's do that.
Do you want to talk? Yeah, like how did it strike you, Simon? I mean, I know you said you're kind of like over Richard Horne, but like, were there other things that struck you about it?
Well, again, I was happy to see that Richard Horne was not dead. I keep forgetting the
Johnny Horne, you mean Johnny?
Sorry, whoops. I was glad that I wouldn't be glad for that. I was glad that Johnny was not dead. I kept forgetting the cardinal rule of television, which is that if you don't see the heart stop or like them get buried, they're not dead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I somehow forgot that. But beyond that, I'm not sure I have any specific thoughts about that sequence beyond, wow, this sure is like next level cruel.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think it deserves commentary that like Lynch has again managed to maybe even top himself in terms of producing a scene of like that cruelty. I mean, one of the people I read writing about this episode sort of talked about it in the same way that you would talk about, like they compared it to scenes like Frank, the Dennis Hopper character, like raping Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet, or the horrifying scenes with Bobby Peru and Laura Dern in Wild at Heart, and like a few other ones, and like put this scene kind of up there. And I agree. I mean, I found that scene very difficult to watch. And it's again heightened by just how like silly a lot of it is at first. I mean, you open on this extremely silly tableau of Johnny done up in this crazy getup with this like where he's all bandaged but like tied to a chair in a ridiculous way, and this bizarre like bear thing that Lynch, this is clearly one of Lynch's like creations that he fabricated himself. It looks so much like his paintings and his kind of sculpture stuff, and the bear is like repeating over and over the "hello Johnny, how are you today" voice, and like it's all so kind of strange and bizarre, and then you quickly flip into this like terror with Richard, and it's so excessive, like not just in the sense of the physical stuff, right? I mean, like he physically sort of assaults her, and the cinematography is all very interesting there with the camera kind of like over Johnny Horn's shoulder, and so we're very much put in the position of like the abuser and all of that kind of stuff. There's that, but then there's also the really hyper excessive verbal abuse on top of that, which is a theme, right? I mean, it links it back to what's his nuts, Caleb Landry Jones, like who doesn't physically touch Becky in that scene, but is, you know, that scene just sort of really perfectly illustrates how it's sometimes a bullshit distinction to make between emotional abuse and physical abuse. Like the damage is there no matter what, and it's anyway. But sorry, were you going to say?
No, can we rewind for a sec? Did you say what's his nuts? I just wanted to make sure I didn't hallucinate that. Well, and also interesting is the fact that, you know, in the middle of this sort of triumvirate of really awful sequences, like the Caleb Landry Jones scene and the two sequences with Richard Horne doing terrible things, we get this really lovely sequence of Harry Dean Stanton singing a song, which, by the way, he just turned 91 a couple days ago. Don't know what kind of super crack he's been using or has been stuffing into his cigarettes all these years, but I need some, because he sounds good. Like his voice sounded good.
Olivia and I watched that documentary about Harry Dean Stanton that's available now. There's like a documentary, and Lynch makes an appearance in it. Lynch sort of interviews Stanton for like maybe 15 minutes in it, and a lot of it is just Harry Dean Stanton singing, and it's kind of amazing. Like it's him sort of being like, I really wish I had pursued music. It's always something I wanted to do, and you know, he's not a big talker, but he will like sing at length, and he has a beautiful voice. Anyway, that's a side note. Go find that film if people are interested, because Harry Dean Stanton's amazing.
Hey Harry. It's not too late, man. Cut a record. It's easier than ever.
It's true.
What's the movie called? I'd be curious to see that.
I think it's called Harry Dean Stanton Partly Fiction. Okay. I think. Yeah.
I need to check that out because he's the man.
There's also, just for people who are interested, there's also another movie coming out soon called Lucky that was directed by John Carroll Lynch that stars Harry Dean Stanton, and David Lynch plays a supporting role in it. And it's a film about a guy who's in his 90s, which is Stanton, like sort of living in this town. I've only seen the trailer for it, but it looks pretty good. I've heard good things about it. Anyway.
There's no relation between David and John Carroll, isn't there?
No, Olivier thought that too. It was funny. Olivier was like, "Oh, Lynch's son directed it." And I was like,
no.
Lynch's son? And then, no, you remember who John Carroll Lynch is, and you're like, that
wait.
guy's definitely not David Lynch's son.
Anyway. We are just about to hit the hour mark, so I think, given that it was a slightly shorter episode of television, perhaps we should make this a slightly shorter episode of the podcast. Womp womp. However,
all right.
I will.
I have one more point to make.
I figured you would. No, that was the opening I was going to give you.
All right. Simon knows me well enough to know that I have to get a solid ramble in at the end. But I don't know. I just wanted to hit the point a little harder about some of the stuff around like the violence and the misogyny and everything in this episode, because I don't know. Like I saw a couple of responses that like really weirded me out. One of the things that I have been sort of mystified by, that I see pretty continuously on like film Twin Peaks Twitter, is this idea that there should be a cut of the series that like excises the musical numbers from the show, that everybody's like, oh, well, when they put this together as an 18-hour thing, they should just take out the musical numbers, because they're clearly just like bookends. And I find this to be such a mystifying attitude that I really don't agree with that. And I think this episode particularly highlighted I think what a disservice you're doing to yourself as a spectator if you approach the musical numbers that way. I mean, I think the musical number here with Rebecca Del Rio singing this song at the end of the episode, which was called No Stars, and it was written by her and David Lynch and one other person. Like the song And the effective space of her on the stage is so important to the whole episode. I find it crazy that you would think like, oh, this is just a bookend. And Lynch, again, like really highlights that with the length. I mean, we have like 4.5 minutes of the song before the credits come on. Whereas the other ones, I think, do generally largely just play over the credits. We maybe get like 30 seconds to a minute of the song before the credits start. But here, I think this is maybe the closest scene that we've had to like the more classical scenes of the original series in the Roadhouse, where Julie Cruz singing on the stage sort of participates in a kind of larger, like effective landscape of the episode. And for me, rewatching this episode, the part where Rebecca Del Rio gets to like the refrain of the song and starts singing "No Stars, No Stars," and like the narrative of the song starts with her reminiscing about this sort of night when she met her love, and then it goes sort of bad, and like they end up in a world without stars, right? Which mirrors what the log lady says earlier with like the light is dying, the glow of the world is dying, and we're in the space of no stars. And again, for me, like that scene is so integral to a defense against any idea that this show is simply like reveling in violence against women for its own sake. I think it's much more about grieving the tragedy of what happens to, and I'm quoting somebody else here, but I thought this was a really strong point, like the traumas, the quote, traumas faced by strong-willed women in the world, like the way women are beaten and abused. And like the show is asking you to spend 5 minutes at the end of it and just sit with that as like a realization. And again, I think this really plays into the idea that the show is thematizing, like, it's forcing us to reckon with our wish that the show would just take us to this nostalgic space where everything is good again and everything could be fine and the whole world could be the way it used to be back in the day and everything could be great. And the show is continually reminding us, like, that wasn't what Twin Peaks was about in the first place, and the world isn't like that. And like to read reviews where people are like, well, this show should show the men that are killing these women or the men that are abusing women being punished. It's like, yeah, because that's so often how it happens when men hurt women in real life. I think the show is so much more interesting than that. And I think that I found that Rebecca Del Rio scene heartbreaking, particularly the second time, like it tears in my eyes the second time. So just to plea to people to don't turn off or don't like stop watching or stop enjoying when the music comes on, because I think it matters here.
It's interesting that that's the sequence so far. That, I mean, the Chromatic song came kind of close, but that's really, this is really the most Julie Cruz-esque number that we've gotten, like the most sort of classically Twin Peaksian, and yet the sentiment of the song like couldn't be further away. Like it's the opposite of idyllic. It's funny that people would bring up that. I mean, I don't know if people were specifically targeting this episode for they should cut out the musical numbers, because there are so many other more obvious episodes where the musical numbers seem more tacked on, like the one with the cactus blossoms, or for that matter, the 2 episodes featuring Au revoir Simone, who like. Yeah. I know, at least this is a bit of a random trivia, but like Lynch is obviously just a really big fan of theirs, because like they talked about how they were playing a show somewhere once, and some guy turned up like super early before everyone else because he was such a big fan, and it turned out to be David Lynch.
Whoa.
Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah,
that would be for me the only reason to start and be in a band would be to have David Lynch and or like Keanu Reeves turn up in the audience.
Yeah,
I would start a band for that purpose, but other than that, it's not really my thing.
I mean, knowing Lynch, he may very well have had ulterior motives, but I'm going to choose to think that he didn't.
Yes.
Anyway, it's like it seems weird of all the episodes, like to level that accusation or that wish.
No, I was a little shocked. I was a little shocked to see that after this episode, because I just felt like it was such an integral part of the episode that I was like, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there are other ones where you could be like, you don't need to watch them, but I don't know. I have to admit, I've spent the last like week kind of listening on a loop to the Twin Peaks soundtrack, and it, like just because I want to, it's this like weird thing where it just sort of gets in my head and I can't get it out, but I don't know. I think that the show should be taken as a whole, and like the music here is clearly a choice. I mean, whether or not it's always necessarily that integral to the episode, I think it sort of matters as part of the universe, maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, I'm sure we'll have more on this subject next week when we talk part 11 with a guest to be determined. Yes. But thank you as always, Kate, for joining me, and thank y'all as always for listening. Do feel free to rate, review, etc. the show on iTunes. We have had a small uptick in reviews, but you know what's even better than a small uptick is a bigger than small uptick. So, just consider doing that, because it would make at least one of us happy. And and do check out sordidcinema.com where the show is hosted. And we will be back in roughly a week's time. Thank you all for listening.
Bye.
Candie, please don't let them in your heart, because they'll try